All right, bang, bang. Today is Tuesday. It is May 31st. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Chief, I hope you had a happy Memorial Day, but it would be disingenuous to ask because it's before Memorial Day. We're recording before because obviously we're not going to come in on Monday on the day and record for the next day. So
yeah,
we're a little bit ahead here.
We're a little bit ahead. That's just called being professional.
Exactly.
We're getting ahead. We're responsible adults. We're not waiting till the last minute. So we're getting ahead. You're going to Wisconsin. I'm going to England. There's just nothing in between.
Yeah.
Just a little. We deserve a vacation.
A little bit of a different situation, places when it comes to England versus Wisconsin.
Yeah, but we're both going to be having a few Miller Lights. I can promise you that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So,
and you know what? Credit to us. A lot of shows, I think they would just probably phone it in and do like a Zoom one on like Tuesday morning.
No, sir.
Not us. In studio here.
I'm really going over to investigate the city of London from that last. That's why I'm going. I'm just getting to the bottom of it and be like, hey, are you guys running the world? And if they say yes, then I'm going to call the police.
See, I thought you were going to look into the goat milk.
Oh, no. What episode could we possibly be talking about?
This guy's going over there. Now I know the city of London.
Smuggle stuff back in my carry-on. Just sell black market baby formula.
It would sell. That's for sure. Today we got an interesting topic. We've had this one We've been trying to do it for a while.
We've referenced it on other shows before. It's one of those things that I've always been like, because I love the ancient world and, thinking about stuff like, oh my God, like I can't believe they did that. I can't believe they did that. And then what if scenarios. And this, to me, we're talking about the Library of Alexandria. It is like the ultimate what if scenario because it was, and we'll get into it, but it was like the intellectual center of the world for a period of time and got burned to the ground. They had all these ancient texts from all over the place translated into Greek and which was the language of the Roman Empire at the time, and lost. So it was like all this ancient lost knowledge from everywhere, and it was like, man, like what would the world be like today if we were able to hold on to that knowledge? And I'll show you how drastic the setback was as we go through this episode.
I'm scared. It's also, like you said, we've referenced this so many times where you asked me, have we done this before? And I said no. And then now that we're talking about it, I'm like, fuck, I hope we didn't do it. It's like, and I'm pretty sure we haven't, but at the same time, I can't be 1,000% sure.
When I was doing the research for this, it largely felt like new information.
Okay, good. But it is new. It is new.
Yeah.
Like, listen, I'm 99.9% sure, but there's still that, like, how many times we reference it, there's still that fucking...
Well, I've always been fascinated by it. So, like, I'd probably just bring it up. Like, I could have brought it up on the baby formula episode because I just think it's one of those things. They're so always at the top of my brain. But, yeah, this is the Library of Alexandria. All right, but before we get into talking about the Library of Alexandria, one of my favorite stories on the internet, we've had this one circled to do for a long time now. We got to talk about ChevyDriveChicago.com. Talk about dynasty. Talk about being smart. You got to go to ChevyDriveChicago.com. They have everything you need for this summer. For your current car, go check out that service department. They're going to take care of your tires, your oil, your brakes, everything you need to make sure you're safe and efficient on the road. Chevy Drive Chicago is the #1 place to find that dealership, to find that service station that's going to take care of all your car needs. They're the only one we trust. And when you drop your car off, do yourself a favor. Take a tour around that showroom. They got everything you need. They got the best SUVs on the market, the Equinox, the Blazer, Trailblazer, Trax. They can be all customized to fit your needs. It's simple, and this is the only way to get around this summer. It's the only car dealerships that we trust is ChevyDriveChicago.com. You type in your zip code, they'll pop up on a map. They'll be able to tell you exactly where to go, the closest ones near you. ChevyDriveChicago.com. Get in there, get your service, get your new car. It is the #1 dealership for Chicago, ChevyDriveChicago.com. And with that, let's get into the Library of Alexandria.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
Start at the beginning, which was founded in 332 BC. So I always try to like put things into context of time. So Jesus is like the mark of his birth is 1 or 0, depending on what you think or believe, but it's usually like the time starts in year 1 when he was born. So this is 332 years before Jesus. We're always debating, or as a country talking about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and how long that's like, well, this is a super old document. Like, this is that Library of Alexandria in Alexandria, the city, was founded in the amount of time between like our Declaration of Independence and current day. That's how much time lasts before the library existed until Jesus was born. Like the city, like it's just such a crazy, like how old things are to put in that perspective. Like I remember growing up being like, well, Jesus was like, it's like the oldest thing ever. It's year one. Well, now it's like this thing was founded 332 years, and we think of George Washington as ancient history. Like this thing was ancient text, and this city lasted for about 700 years, and it was founded by Alexander the Great. So Alexander, was great, Roman Empire conqueror, had the empire stretched, all across Europe, all across North Africa, Middle East, etc. And he named the city for himself, and he founded it, but it was really built by his successor, this guy named Ptolemy. It starts with the letter, it's written out with a P. Like the first, it's like a silent P, but then Ptolemy. And there's Ptolemy 1, Ptolemy 2, and Ptolemy 3. And they were the emperors, and they really built this city up. And it's located in present-day Egypt, but that became like the center of the universe for everything. So they had this library that we're going to talk about, but it was also, because it was right on the water, it was like this cultural center too, and like the wealthiest city in the world for a period of time, the largest city in the world for a period of time, and it was also a naval base for the Roman Empire. So it had like the military aspect, you had the intellectual aspect, you had the commercial aspect. Like this place had fucking everything back in the day. It would be like a London or New York of its time, like just a major metropolis. And one of the things that they really wanted to do is they wanted it to be this intellectual center of the world. So like Greeks had Athens, and that was seen as, one of these types of places where they had Socrates and Plato, and they really wanted to try to kind of recreate that vibe, and then but like times a million. And that's what they did. So anytime they would conquer a place, they would find and take all of these different texts and bring them to Alexandria and have the people translate it. Like they took the Old Testament, and the Old Testament, we think of it as like the one that's glued onto the New Testament, but it's like this vast volumes, and it was not like you could there was no printing press back then. So it was all handwritten on papyrus and these scrolls. So they took the entire Old Testament and translated it in like 72 days is what they say. And then they have, so they go to Iraq, and they have all of these like stone tablets from Babylonia. Okay, well, you translate these and put those into Greek and put those in library. So they and then all the way as far as England, and in Rhodes, they whatever the Druids and all the Celts, they had their ancient traditions and knowledge. And they would take those writings and bring those back and translate those and put those in the library. And they had this massive, they describe it as almost more of a college campus than a library. And it housed 500,000, it's an estimation, but they think as many as 500,000 texts that they, over hundreds of years in many places all across Europe and into the Middle East and Egypt, where they would acquire these texts. So some of them were stolen, some of them were purchased. Like there's this story where they had these ancient Greek writings, and one of the emperors of Rome was like, okay, we need to borrow those. We'll rent it. We'll give you this. It's like a shit ton of silver as collateral. You guys hold on to this silver. We'll take those ancient texts that are so valuable to your culture and your heritage, and we'll bring them to Alexandria. We'll translate them and copy them into Greek, and then we'll return them. So okay, fine, you can take it. They take these documents, and then they return them to Greece. They returned the copies and kept the originals, and the Greeks were like, what the fuck are you doing? So they would do all these sorts of things. They did that all the time. That's like one of the more famous ones. But they did this to the point that this became like, oh my God, I have to go to Alexandria. If you were like, and anyone who's anyone in the academic world, intellectual world back then, you went to the Library of Alexandria. It was almost like a pilgrimage that you were going to study there, because all the greatest minds in the world were living in this place at the time. And like I said before, like the cultural thing, okay, or the commerce thing, where ships would come in with goods from, all over the empire. Every time a ship docked in Alexandria, like officials from Alexandria would board the ship, scour it to see if they had any books, and if they did, they would confiscate them and either just keep it, purchase it, or copy it. But they were so driven to get basically anything that was ever written that they would board every ship looking for books and scrolls and things like that. It was fucking crazy. Yeah.
They were out there.
A thirst for knowledge. And they were like, and this is like the Ptolemies were like, knowledge is power. Like we want to be the best at everything. And this is going to be our hub for that. And they definitely tried to make the Library of Alexandria into that sort of a place. So
that's pretty fascinating.
Pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
So, and then it's like, well, what happened to it? Okay. It was destroyed. Okay. So they lost all these different things. So it was destroyed, they think 3 or 4 times. Okay. So the first time was Julius Caesar. They had a siege of the city, and they lit fire to these boats that were at the docks, and the docks caught fire, and there was this kind of almost like a warehouse that was housing all of these different books and scrolls and whatever, and that caught fire, and they lost a ton. But there was still work being done in like the library. So think of this, if it was more of a college campus, it was like, the student center burned down. So they put all like the shitty things that they didn't think had a ton of value in that warehouse. So when that first siege and fire took place, they lost a ton, but they're like, we'll live.
Not a big deal.
That's like the like the Us Weeklies of the ancient time got lost in that fire, or like some like romance novel, like some bullshit.
Yeah,
but
VC
so like like anybody else. Well, not anybody else. Postmoderns don't believe this, but there's like a canon of like a hierarchy of important texts, like Shakespeare and the Bible and all these things that are the Russian literature, like that are deemed by modern standards as more valuable and more important to culture. Well, they had the same kind of hierarchy, and they had like the warehouse that had like the shitty ones that like, yeah, we got this from some little village in Italy, but who fucking cares? But put it in that other one. No one really, there's not a lot of value. So that's what they lost the first time. But that's like the most famous story about it being burned down, but it wasn't like the most impactful. The most impactful one happened because now you fast forward all the way to 324 AD after. So now this Alexandria has been around for 600 years, and the Romans are still in charge, but that's when they had the Council of Nicaea. And the Council of Nicaea said, hey, well, Christianity is the official and only religion of the empire, and so any of your other pagan books or rituals or anything like that, that stuff is out. Okay, it's now like so Christianity became the thing. Over time, they made these other religions illegal. Okay, and in 391, there was an emperor named Theodosius. I struggle with those Greek names, and he's just like, you know what? Burn that fucking city to the ground, and they did. So the library, which still had all these texts, but was seen as kind of like maybe a threat or like a nuisance to Rome at this point, because it was this economic, intellectual, cultural hub of the empire that challenged Rome to a bit. They're like, just burn that place to the ground. So 391, city is destroyed. They think that they got there's evidence that a few of the works got out of there, but they destroyed the library. And then this guy was such like a zealot for Christianity in 391. He's like, you know what? Where the library was, build a church on it. So they built this, this church in Alexandria. And then like a few hundred years later, when the Muslim religion was founded and that became like its own empire, they eventually came through and swept through Alexandria, and they burned whatever was left. So there's like some evidence that some texts were saved or hidden or preserved. And then, when the Christians came through and said, hey, fuck this city, that was, the Romans, the Christians, 391. and then the Muslims came and just finished the job. But it was really like kind of, the two predominant religions of modern times are the ones who are responsible for destroying the knowledge that was housed in Alexandria, which is kind of interesting.
Imagine bringing these people back.
Imagine.
And explaining to them what the iCloud is.
Dude, I want to get to that too, because this is like, I want to get to like what was lost. Okay.
Yeah.
So you heard of the name Copernicus?
Of course.
Okay. So of course, right. We all learned about Copernicus in school. He's the guy who was the first guy credited anyways with saying that the earth actually travels around the sun and not the other way around. And he was vilified. He was like, by the church, like, you are a heretic. Like, of course the universe revolves around earth. What are you fucking talking about? Okay. Well, he wasn't the first one to say that. Okay. It was this guy, Aristarchus of Samos, who made this discovery at the library over 1,000 years earlier, almost 2,000 years earlier than Copernicus. He calculated, and then he did so this guy was so Copernicus is a name everybody knows. I had never heard of this Aristarchus of Samos. Had you?
No.
Of course not, right? But this is a guy who was way back when, was no, actually the sun is the center of our solar system and the earth goes around it. And he also was able to calculate how far earth was from the sun, how far the earth was from the moon, how big the sun was, and how big the moon was. So that's one of those things that I will just never be able to even fathom. How can just a person standing on earth be able to look up into the sky and be like, we're traveling around that big thing, okay, that ball of fire in the sky, and I can actually, with math, tell you, just want to fucking scroll with a feather pen and just look at shit and figure out a way to calculate that where I'm standing on Earth and how far we are from the sun and the moon. That like how they must have been so fucking brilliant. And I remember Big Cat having our argument with somebody at some point saying that he was smarter than Christopher Columbus. Okay. Okay. This probably was an argument if you're like, oh,
this was the old Floyd Mayweather days when he said he could beat Floyd Mayweather in a fight.
If they went punch for punch, he wouldn't be able to knock out Floyd. And I remember Big Cat saying this, and I remember thinking he definitely knows more stuff, right? Because he's born when he's born, where Columbus is they're feather pens and they thought the earth was flat. But it's these people, if you gave them the tools of today, they would probably who knows what all the stuff they calculated with just being with nothing, no telescopes, no nothing. They just figured it out just with math in their brain somehow. All right, let's take a quick break from all this library talk to talk about something else that you should be doing. If you were smart as these people who are hanging out at the Library of Alexandria, you already have the Game Time app. If you're just learning about it now, you've made a mistake, but it's not too late. Go to your app store, download the Game Time app, go to the account tab to create a login, and when you do that, you'll be able to redeem code DOGWALK for $20 off your first purchase. That's a round of beers, that's a popcorn, that's a soft pretzel, that's a good time at the ballpark, and you're never going to find lower prices than what you do at the Game Time app. I've said it before, I've said it again. We use it for the Ranger game. Bang, right from the airport, right to Game 7. I'm using it for Cubs tickets this summer. Tickets, you can't find lower prices than this. I found literally on the Game Time app, they had tickets for $3. Walk in, the weather's going to be nice, and you can do that with last-minute deals. People looking to dump their tickets. You get the guaranteed lowest prices. You're going to be sitting together with your friends. Game Time app is where you go to do that, and just download that app. It's the only one we use, the only one I'll ever use. Game Time, the best. And now let's get back to the Library of Alexandria. And speaking of math in the brain, the inventor of trigonometry, fuck that guy. First of all, that class always gave me trouble. Trig was the worst. But his name was Hipparchus, something like that. But he figured out he was detailed trigonometry. And the same thing. And so that's where kind of these things are linked, is that these people would come here and be like, hey, I know I just developed this system of math called trigonometry. And then another guy comes along, he's like, I'm going to use trigonometry to figure out how big the fucking earth is. Okay. It's okay, I don't really understand that, but that's another thing. Okay. So we always credit Christopher Columbus and Magellan as the guy is being like, the Earth is round. Okay, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. We're just going to go west because the Earth is round. We're going to get to India by going the opposite way. And it's like, actually, there was a guy, Aristophanes, okay? Like, I don't know how to pronounce some fucking Greek name, Roman name, whatever. He calculated the circumference of the Earth. So somehow that guy with math figured out exactly how wide the Earth was, or how far around it was. So if he found out how far around it was, he also knew that it was just fucking round. How the fuck did he know that it was round? So that was like, in the early days, if it was destroyed I can't remember exactly when this guy was existing. Let's just call it 300 AD. And then we went 1,200 years before someone thought of that again. That's fucking crazy. 1,200 years of progress that just did not exist.
It's halted,
reversed. Okay. And then it was, I don't know if we've talked about this before with Columbus though too. Speaking of that episode of the City of London and like the Knights Templar and stuff, he had like his father-in-law had like links to the Freemasons and Knights Templar, and supposedly they were in like Portugal or something, and they told this story of this guy, St. Brendan, an Irish guy who had sailed and landed in North America, but it was like a myth. But they're saying like he actually got to this guy, St. Brendan, got to North America. And like that was like, kind of a secret that North America even existed. So like there's a theory that Columbus knew what he was doing the whole time. Like he was trying to get to North America, but could never get it approved by anyone unless he was like, I have a shorter route to India where all the riches are. But he was there's evidence to show that he was always trying to get to North America because he knew it was there.
I think that might have been in the first doc we ever watched. Was that
Who Discovered America?
Yes,
I think it might have. We might have mentioned that too.
Yeah, in there. Yeah.
But seriously, but back to this though.
You know what? It's impressive. But what the fuck else did this guy have to do? It's not like Bar Rescue reruns were on. You know what I mean? Like it's not like he was. You don't have to worry about 17 grind out games with the Bears. The fuck else was he doing?
Just sit there and figure shit out. Yeah. They're just trying not to die. Yeah. Okay. There is another guy. Okay, he's talking about progress, right? So there's this guy, Herophilos. Okay, just bear with me on the name. He's the first guy who discovered that the brain is the organ that actually controls the body. So they were doing like anatomy and like dissecting like human cadavers in the early like 200 AD or whatever it was, and somehow he was able to look at this dead body and figure out that it was the brain. The brain kind of ran everything. Where if you look at like mummies in ancient Egypt, they thought the brain was just like filler tissue. Like might as well put fucking sand in there, and they thought that the heart was where all thought and all like everything was regulated through the heart, and because they could feel it, it's beating, it's it's constantly going. They thought it was the heart that was like the vital organ that ran everything. When this guy was like, actually no, like look at all these these connections in the spine and like how it goes. It's like the brain is the most important thing. So it's like that's fucking crazy that he figured that out. And again, no one had that thought again for like another 1,000 years. Okay, there was a guy called Heron. Heron created. He was like an engineering fucking genius. Created a wind turbine that used air pressure to pump water out. Okay, so he created that invention, and then he was like, that's interesting that the wind can create this pump. So like you had like effectively like he invented a way to create running water with wind and wind power, and then he used around the same period of time, he also created a device powered by steam. Like you heat up the water, create the pressure that way. So he basically invented the steam engine. Okay. The steam engine wasn't invented again. And this is the steam engine and the cotton gin are things that came along. Steam engine was 1698. The cotton gin was soon after, I think right around this, soon after that or sometime in the 1700s. But that was really like the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. And we've been like accelerating our progress really ever since then. Like it's just been the Industrial Revolution led to flight, led to this, led to that, electricity, blah, blah, blah. And this guy, can you like, what if like this library didn't burn down? Someone's looking at that. I'm like, man, I bet you we can build a full boat with that. maybe they discover America in like 700 or 600, you know, if they had access to it. It just makes you think, like, how, like, would we be on fucking Mars by now if the Library of Alexandria didn't exist? Would we, you know, who knows what would be going on if human progress hadn't been halted by like violence.
It makes you think too, like, imagine like if these people did have a piece of knowledge,
yeah,
and they pass it on. Can you imagine if like your dad just came up to you one day, he's like, I got this is like it's a Brandel secret,
yeah,
like, you know, and we're waiting for the right time, yeah, exactly.
Generations.
It's like here, like the trick guy who, like, it was already known, like you said,
yeah.
But could you imagine that if someone just had like a big fucking Columbus, like you said,
his father, a little tip off. Yeah.
Could you imagine if you got tipped off, like, oh, trust me, like Alexandria, like we had a little piece of information that nobody has,
right? And that's like, you know, and then, like, you hear things like this, and you hear about like Plato and this and that, and like Plato knew about like the whole reason we talk about Atlantis still, and people are still looking for Atlantis. Well, it was because Plato had like the same kind of thing. It was like a family secret that it was like, and he had the dates, and the dates line up with that cataclysm that led to the Great Flood, which is described in like Noah's Ark. Yeah. Okay, so it's like all this shit, it seems like there's at least some evidence that ties it all together. And then it also, reading about the Library of Alexandria and like this progress that, you know, we could be like 1,000 or plus years behind where we could be if that didn't happen. And it just makes me think, well, what if like the power grid and the internet just went out like bang overnight? That would be like the equivalent, and it'd be like, holy fuck, like everybody would die. And then there's like, how do you recoup, like, you know, like I could Google like nuclear physics, right? I could Google it and like have a diagram. I wouldn't really necessarily understand it, but somebody would. But if you're just starting from fucking scratch, where you're trying to like survive and live and do all this stuff, then how do you get to a point where like, yeah, like we're powering the world with all this different shit? Like no one would know how to do anything. No one would know how to even make paper.
Scary.
Yeah,
that's a scary thought.
Progress could always be halted or reversed. So it's like, we should not take how we're living for granted.
No, and that's what really sucks is you don't really know. We don't know the extent of what was lost.
Right.
You know?
There could be other
knows?
Shit in there that who knows? Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, so it is like they were doing things with medicine, like an anatomy and engineering and fucking math and like in the brain power that was there. Can you imagine? Like I always wonder, like I obviously wouldn't speak the language, but I've always like I've talked about this with you before, but I was in this one meeting one time in my old job where it was like business leaders and politicians and like, you know, a couple of guys were billionaires, and I was just sitting there like, what am I doing at this dinner? But I felt like I was like learning so much. Can you imagine sitting in a room with all these fucking people, and they're like, oh, like, did you hear what this guy did? He can help you with that. So you have like all the, like, it's like the #1 networking place. It was like LinkedIn, but everybody was studying. The LinkedIn was the library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These fucking brainiacs or something, man.
Yeah.
Like I told you, so I finished watching Chernobyl. I know I'm 3 years late.
Yeah.
But that fucking scientist, man.
Oh, yeah.
Like that way they described, like I couldn't tell you what happened, but the way he broke it down was like, all right, like I have an idea of how this
happened. A million little bullets going through your body 1,000 miles an hour. Like,
well, but more so, this was the last in the courtroom when he explained how the reactor blew up. You know what I mean? That's what I was like, oh man, you know, and it was just going through the steam and everything like that was crazy.
Yeah.
People are that smart.
I have no idea how that.
Cool. We got to. I'd love Pythagorean.
Yeah.
I want to know about that fucking guy.
That guy.
Yeah, dude.
That guy caused you some problems. Pythagoras.
Oh my God, dude, I was so bad at math.
Pythagorean theorem. That's geometry.
Yeah.
And it was like the word geography, not geometry. That was like, that word was like coined in Alexandria, geography. So like a word that they're like, hey, let's just study like the way the earth looks and like maps and shit like that. That came out of Alexandria. Like,
a lot of geos. Geometry.
So, yep.
Oh, wow.
So, wild place. And there's a YouTube video called like, what would have happened if like the Roman Empire never fell? Because that was like another thing. So it was like you had like this destruction of Alexandria, and like Christianity became so dogmatic as a part of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire collapses, and then the Middle Ages start, where it's like science, education, all those things just kind of ceased for like 1,000 years. So think of how much progress we've made. Like, we went from the Wright brothers in 1904 or something like that, early 1900s, to landing on the moon in 60 years. Like, imagine how far we'd be if we like discovered how to fly with, you know, steam engine and all this kind of stuff, that we just keep progressing as we did to get to the point where we can power something that could fly to go to outer space. What if that happened 1,000 years before? Where would we be?
Where would we be, Chief?
Crazy.
We'd be doing this on the fucking planet Saturn.
Some society would have come and be like, we got to get rid of all the morons.
Yeah, we're done.
We wouldn't have made it.
Yeah, just be fucking intellectuals.
Yep.
Well, all right, Chief. Interesting. I'm glad we finally did it. I know we've been talking about doing this for a long time, and we thought we did, we didn't, but so I'm glad we talked about it. So,
and we definitely didn't do it, right?
No, we didn't do it. We didn't do it. We didn't do it.
You have like a memory for this that I just don't.
Yeah, we didn't do it.
Okay.
Confident.
Okay, good.
If we did, sorry. But we didn't do it.
But we didn't.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. That's it for today. We'll see you all tomorrow.